call the meeting to order and have the roll, please, Kelsey.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Mr. Paloma?
Here.
Mrs. Salee?
Here.
Mrs. Smith?
Here. Are there any additions that we have to the agenda?
This is the most up-to-date agenda, which I shared with you today. We've had a couple of recent additions. They are included here, such as items. We've added item G, which is the renewal, or excuse me, the First Amendment of the renewal contract for Townsend. This is part of adding a second location with Sm3 Artisans location. And then we also added item H to the agenda, which is to recommend the installation of a public address system through RJ Beck at a quote of $22,500. And this would be covered through ESSER funds that we have.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? By Kent, is there a second?
Second.
Have the roll, please.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Paloma?
Yes.
Mrs. Salee?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes. The minutes were submitted to us, and having looked that over, are there any corrections or additions that need to be made? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented? So, moved by Jackie. Second. One have a roll, please.
Mrs. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Paloma?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes. And we come to the sponsors report, Steve.
Well, thank you, Gene. I appreciate it. We are actually pretty active right now, I would say. First and foremost, we are working on the opening assurances for the second site that you guys will be having at Sm3 Artisans. Last night, we were able to get the amendment on the agenda, so that was approved by Margaret's school board. And this evening, we will get that amendment hopefully approved, and then we'll get that off to legal counsel, as well as finalizing the opening assurances. We did have to work on a few items that were in the lease, but I think that is pretty much worked through now with legal counsel. We had some communication today as well, back and forth, and then that should be ready to go. That is 10 business days prior to it being able to open. So depending on if we can get that uploaded, say tomorrow, then we'll have to go 10 days out before that second site can be utilized.
Okay, and what does that do to the school calendar then? For the students to
Well,
start?
if it ends up being 10 days from when we submit, let's say we submit tomorrow, that would put us at Wednesday, the first week of school, being the first day that we would be able to have students meet our teachers there. So Monday, the 30th is the first day of school, so September 1st, then unless there's approval from the state otherwise, it looks like September 1st would be the first day of meetings.
So a delay of 2 days for those students.
And one final box that we have to check is having the general inspection from the health department. That is tomorrow, it's taking place. I need that there at 2:30. So I will adjust that open assurances checkbox for you so that you can submit that showing that that has been prepared.
Great. And the opening assurances does not need to be done last year or this year unless a second site has been opened up. And that is why the opening assurances has to occur. So like my first year, we had to do the opening assurances. Every year we had to do it. Every year we had to do it. One of the things they simplified was we don't need to see that anymore unless there's changes. So this year, opening assurances have to occur because of the change in the second site. Also, we were able to get the upload done at the end of July. I will tell you, our council felt good about it. I do want to remind you that even if we would qualify for an effective rating, we would not get it because it's a safe harbor year. So everybody is going to be safe harbor from any type of rating. The problem is if you get a good rating, like last year, we were blessed to get an effective, which would put us in the third year of effective, which really minimizes some of the documentation that you got to turn in. This year is the same way. So if we would get an effective, it still doesn't help us out. We will have to do the same next year, and then hopefully that effective rating will come, which would then be the third consecutive year of effective, with 2 years of safe harbor years involved in that. So, you know, we do feel pretty good, but we didn't want to not do what was necessary. We didn't want to kind of just go through the motions. We wanted to do it right. So Ryan and Kelsey and Jean have done a nice job that last month. And I think hopefully everything looks pretty good. And then finally, I will tell you that there is a little bit of a structural change. I am no longer compliance officer. I am basically what you would call director of compliance. That's what I put on my email title. What's the difference? Just like the attendance officer I used to be, now I'm director of attendance. We will utilize more administrative assistance and, you know, that type of collaboration, cooperative work to get a lot of these uploads done and stuff. So it fell solely and squarely on my shoulders in the past. It is now going to kind of be a mixed bag from people at Pep One Wagner to what appears to be some administrative assistance helping, as well as myself and career superintendent. So we'll keep working on that. We are kind of in the process of trying to figure out exactly how this is going to occur. But our monthly meetings and all paperwork that needed to be uploaded thus far, I have done. But once school starts and the assistant principal role, yeah, it's going to be very difficult for me to keep up with that. So that's when it's going to have to be uploaded, placed in our folders to where they need to be by others. But I think we'll be able to do that just fine. Hopefully, just with a lot of communication, we'll be good to go with getting everything in the folders for our uploads in this room.
You know, Steve, we had talked about having some kind of checklist or some kind of scheduling of what needs to be done at certain times of the years in terms of what we need from you. Do we have anything like that? Any kind of guidance like that from Pebble and Wagner?
Yes, I don't know if I can share that. It is a calendar that they give us every year. I will check on that.
Okay.
I have to be very careful with communication from our council to us and share with you. When it's approved, then that's when I can share. So it would be an attachment to the email. And Ryan, I could certainly get that to you. Board members, would you like that as well?
I would certainly.
Okay. And what I'll do is if I get the okay from Brian, I will get that to you. It is broken down by month.
Okay.
And we utilize that realistically very faithfully. It's kind of our TCS compliance Bible, if you will,
right,
to make sure that we are trying to get stuff done. Now, last year, we also sent an email that was regarding just the settlement deadlines and so forth, but we obviously won't need to worry about that this year, which is very exciting.
Yes.
Very, very exciting. And then finally, and if you have any other questions after this, I'll certainly answer them. Finally, I shared with you the first quarter legal update. So if you have any questions, let me know. That may not be, probably won't be coming from me in the future. It will probably be coming from somebody else, but it will need to be sent to all of you and TCS administration, basically quarterly, so 4 times. And the last one will come in May. So I think it's like August, November, is January. All right. What are the?
So our corrective action plan, we're on schedule with things that have
Yeah,
to be done?
Yeah, I told them in our monthly meeting, after our July meeting, I went and I sent all of our notes, all of your guys' packets to our council. He said he would get back with me this early part of the fall.
Okay,
But I will tell you that that communication should be occurring here in the next probably 2 to 4 weeks.
okay.
He just got back from vacation. But I am also informing him, because in our last monthly meeting here in August, last Thursday, Ryan has shared with me the policies that did get approved at the last board meeting, so that he can now be aware of those policies. I think it was a credit card policy and one other one, policy. Those two were taken care of. So you guys are still in great shape for that, because you don't need board action with those corrective action plan items until the fall, at any point going forward here. And then I think a few of them might have an action plan of something that needs to be done this morning as well.
And the next meeting is, the next sponsor meeting?
Our next sponsor meeting, I believe, is September 9th.
So that you know that.
It is, let me just check on that. It is a Thursday, September 9th.
You can make it.
And what time, I'm sorry?
8:30 a.m.
On September.
September 9th, 8:30 a.m.
And then if you're not able to do that, let me know. Work to get there.
And let me know who's coming, because I'll share the monthly agenda with them as well, so you have an idea of what's going on ahead of time.
Anything else, Steve?
I think that's it at this point.
Are there any questions? All right, move on then. Is there anything to present for public participation? Right, we'll move on to the liaison reports. I just have had pretty frequent communication with Ryan. I spoke with Adam, our legal counsel, yesterday about the issue with needing to add what we're going to vote on tonight for the amendment regarding the second location. And I think everything else has been going well. Under the legislative report, we had just gotten that from Steve. I believe you would have gotten one from Adam also, a legislative report. So there's nothing else to report for that. I did wonder, had you, Kelsey, attended the August 4th workshop on the interpretation of the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Ryan and I.
Okay, I thought you had. So in your report, if you would just reflect on that, that would be great. Finance, Jack.
Well, we met yesterday and we had a brief meeting, and I believe she's going to give a presentation.
Okay, very good. And personnel, I don't believe at this point in time there was anything new. I did wonder, with the individuals that we're considering tonight, had there been a vetting process with that as far as interviews and things, or was that?
So, yeah, so looking here at the hires tonight, we have Chad Schwogo, there was an interview that took place there. He was the only math applicant that we had for math tutor position. The other hire was Sm3 and has worked with us in the past as a tutor, and we're looking at bringing her on board to help be the teacher of record for our elective courses. And she has the general substitute license, which is unique, which will allow her, in talking with Adam and Stephanie, will allow her the ability to be the teacher of record for our elective courses.
Okay. So was the hiring procedures followed that we have laid forth for those two individuals?
Definitely with Chad. With Ann, it was more of a need, and she's worked with us in the past.
Okay.
And it's a perfect fit.
All right, Dora had nothing to report, and then Ken, we have the report from Steve. So we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Kelsey.
In your board packets, the first thing that is attached is the minutes, so we can go ahead and kind of flip past that. The first financial report that you'll come to is the cash reconciliation. And you can see toward the bottom right, the total of all of our fund balances. We ended with a little bit under 2.4 million. Does anybody have any questions for the reconciliation? Following the reconciliation, we just got our disbursement summary for the month. There was nothing out of the ordinary, nothing particular to point out. We also have our outstanding disbursement summary, so payments that we made that just haven't been cashed yet. And then we come to our monthly spreadsheet. Does anybody have any questions before I move forward? So if you look at in the top left section, you can see our beginning cash balance for the fiscal year was about 1.6 million, and that's going to remain the same. We leave that as what we started the fiscal year with. To the right, we've got
Kelsey, so that number, just so everybody understands, that number is different from the 2.8.
this spreadsheet is looking specifically at just our general fund, no other funds, just the general fund. That's why it's less. To the right, if you look under July actual, we've got our state foundation payment. We've also got the career tech funding. These are pretty similar to the June payment. Below that, we have our expenses. I've been working pretty diligently to try to get some of the salaries into the ESSER fund. So we're bringing our salary expense down as much as we're able to, which has been helpful. In the bottom right, you can see the income versus expenses, and we did end up bringing in about 54,000.
Red or black better than red.
Right, positive is good.
Yeah, positive is good. That's exactly.
That's what we like to see. Following that, we have our August foundation payment from the state. This is a little bit reflective of some of the changes that you were referring to, Jean. So one of the funding changes that happened was we're going to get a little bit more for facilities funding. So if you look to the right under the monthly payment and you go past the first section to that next number of 33,801. Prior to that, we had received 10,700 in July. So that's a pretty significant jump from what we were receiving. They have not yet implemented some of the other changes that they talked about. Our per pupil funding isn't really going to change much this year. They're doing it on a basis of it only goes up a certain percentage this year, a little bit more the following year before they implement it at full 100%. So they're kind of easing into it, I guess would be the way to say that. So ours isn't very affected this year. It didn't go up a lot. We won't really see that change until October. I spoke with an ODE rep after that, just talked to him about how to budget considering the changes, and he said it'll be pretty similar to what you're getting. So it wasn't a whole lot of difference.
So the change in facilities funding was because.
I'm not sure I understand.
They're providing more per student. They're paying more per student for facilities funding.
Sorry,
I don't know what's doing that. I wasn't touching
Someone
it.
said, "Hey Siri."
So they're providing more per student for the facilities funding, so that's why we got that bump. below that, if we look at the adjustments, I know we talked about it last month, I just want to point it out again, you can see the FTE review, the negative adjustment, that's our payback to the state. That's based on 8% of our revenue, so we're only gonna see that change if, the percentage at least, we're only gonna see the percentage change if they would come back from our FTE review this year and say there was more than a certain amount of discrepancy, and what we found, it could go up to 12% of our revenue. Following our foundation payment, we've just got our FTE report. August is the same as July, it stays constant over the summer months. So on the second page, you can see our school total is at 542.66. Are there any questions so far? The next chart I made because I wanted to provide some information on the various grants. I think sometimes it's hard to understand like which grant has which amount of funding. We throw a lot of words out like ESSER and Title I and things like that. So I just wanted to give some organized information. Some of our grants from last year weren't completely used. I will say that some of these are hard for us to spend. With the supplement, not supplant rule, I can't take any expenses that we've already been incurring over the years and just throw them into a grant. It has to be something new, something we're supplementing with. I was for IDEA, for example, for the special education, I was able to put our new intervention specialist into that grant, so her entire salary and benefits will come out of that. Typically, you can only transfer 10% of what's unspent into the next year for most of these. I've heard it might be a little different with COVID. They might be allowing more. Again, with the amount that was unspent in some of these, it will be difficult to hit that threshold of spending the entire grant. But I've been working really extensively on trying to identify whatever costs I can into the various grants. I've put some notes about planned expenses below, so you can see things that we are trying to do just to save money. Our other new hire, Jill Carney, she's going to be in our Title I grant, her entire salary and benefits. Are there any questions over any of the grants?
Very helpful to
There-
have it laid out.
There are other stipulations per grant also, you know, obviously there are certain things you can spend each one on. If you want any further documentation, I have the ODE documents that have the spending guidance, the allowances on them. I could always share those as well if anybody was interested. Next, we move on to the ESSER grants. These are a little bit different. A little bit more lenient with how you can spend them. So there's no supplement, not supplant rule for these. So I was able to put salaries and benefits into these. We paid our teachers summer hours through ESSER 1. I've put our general education teachers into ESSER 1. Once ESSER 1 is used up, you can see we've got about 157,000 remaining as of right now. Once that is used up, we'll move into ESSER 2. ESSER 2 is significantly more money, but we do have longer to spend it. We have up until September 2023. Some of the expenses that we've looked at for ESSER 2 include the new the repairs on our air conditioning unit, the PA system. We plan on paying the tutors through ESSER. We are paying Bob Hamilton through ESSER and continue to pay some of the general education salaries and benefits through ESSER 2. Stipulations for ESSER 2, you have to spend ESSER 1 first. And also, something important to note with the ESSER grants, they've really stressed, and they talked about this in the funding webinar that we sat through, they really stressed it has to be reasonable and necessary, and also it should be in response to COVID. So you can't throw any expense into these grants. The money's not just there to be spent on anything. It's supposed to be in response to COVID, in response to the learning gaps. So for example, the tutors are a perfect way to help us address some of the learning gaps that students might have incurred.
So for example, if our staff goes through assessments for students and finds that we really are that many students are really behind in terms of acquiring credits and that kind of thing. If we felt the need, then we could hire a new teacher with benefits through that, because we could directly relate that to COVID and
Yes.
education.
And having the data to back it up, like you're saying, like saying we're assessing
Assessment
it,
tools.
yeah, that would be very key. That's justification, any
Okay.
justification that we can provide, because with all the grant money that they're throwing out right now, they are going to audit these very carefully, more so than what they have in the past. I think they spoke about each school having the normal grant audit at the end of the year or towards the end of the school year, and also a separate single audit for the grants, just because there's so much money right now. So any justification that we have like that, where we can say this is directly tied to COVID, we would be in the clear, yes.
So do all three criteria have to be met for every expenditure of the ESSER 2 months? So the criteria was reasonable, necessary, and in response to COVID.
Yes,
All three have to be met.
there's actually, I think there was maybe 5 criteria, and I don't know them right off the top of my head, but those are the 3 most that stick out in my head, that are the most critical, yes, for every expense.
So as we're making expenditures, is that being recorded then in some kind of?
So when I budgeted ESSER 2 out, I had to place it into certain categories, and you're gonna kind of see that with ESSER 3. I've got the ESSER 3 budget behind this. And so one of the things that I had said we plan on spending on was the PA system, and they came back and said, how is that related to COVID? And I said, well, we're placing students further apart throughout the school based on, social distancing. We're having to create more labs, and with the students all spaced out to address that safety issue, we need a PA system in case of emergency. And they were fine with that then.
Great.
A lot of what we've planned on doing, I've been in contact with an ODE rep, so I do have a lot of the things that we've already done. I have like a paper trail where he's saying, yes, that's allowable. So
Okay.
yes.
Great.
ESSER 3 is 2.9 million. Again, you have to spend ESSER 1 and 2 first. We have until September 2024 with this money. But again, those stipulations that it has to be in response to COVID, it has to be reasonable and necessary, those still apply. The second packet now, this is the ESSER 3 budget. This is what I submitted in our CCIP account, our grants account, to the state. This is very tentative. We have not, because we have so much in ESSER 2 and ESSER 1, we have not sat down and carefully budgeted this out. I am able to edit this. This is very tentative. This is just like a starting point of where we think some of these expenses might fall. So what we would be approving tonight, again, very tentative, not set in stone. We will probably look at this a little bit closer once we get further in. Right now, I think the focus was a little bit more on ESSER 2 because that's what's coming soon. But you can see it just kind of generally lays out the 800,000, for example, is instructional salaries. That would be our tutor salaries, our teacher salaries, benefits, purchase services. There's money budgeted for safety and facilities, so upkeep of the building, supplies, cleaning supplies in response to COVID is an allowable expense. If we're undergoing extra sanitation, extra precautions, things like that, we can put those expenses into supplies. So again, budgeted out just with a very broad idea. It's very tentative. It'll be looked at closer a little bit further along.
Is our air filtration system satisfactory in terms of COVID?
Yeah, we had talked to Tiffin Deluxe, the company that does our air system, and they're actually one that we approved to fix the air conditioning unit, which they're going to be doing here next month or so. And they said that what we have that was installed in 2015 should be fine. They said they've only put in one of the Cadillac systems to, since COVID hit. So it's not the high demand.
Behind that general layout of the budget, it's just the budget details. It goes a little bit more into detail on what some of those expenses could be. So I talk about salaries, us retaining teachers, things like that. Are there any questions for me?
Very detailed, thank you so much.
Now, this is what you had to submit, or this is what you?
That's what I had to submit. Mhm. Again, I can submit budget revisions, so it's very tentative, but
Nope.
a general layout of where the expenses might fall.
So the items like on page 6 and 7, for example, when we look at EL tutor or an EL teacher or a health services coach, those are items that you've talked about and are planning for, or
Where are you referring to? On page 6?
on page 6, yeah, of the of your budget details.
Mm-hmm.
When it talks about the support services under purchase services, the health services coach, is that referring to our school nurse?
Oh, coach is a separate one, but the health services could be something like that. It could
Okay.
also be if we would want to look at mental health support, anything like that.
Okay,
So again, we haven't talked.
those are all tentative,
Yes, we have not.
just so everybody understands that.
Yeah, we have not planned anything extensively with SR3 because we have to get there. We're not finished with SR1, and then we've got SR2, so we haven't looked in detail at SR3 yet. As an administrative team, we will. It's been a collaborative effort to look at some of these grants.
This is just your starting.
Yes, this is the
Got it,
jump
yep,
off point.
Yep, gotta start somewhere.
Yeah. And then the upkeep of the door buzzer locking system, then the installation of that, when do we plan to have that?
That is actually taking place this Thursday.
Okay, that's
I
all.
was scheduled for Monday, but I got an email today saying that they moved that ahead of their schedule. So that will be this week.
Are there any questions for Kelsey? Very good, very good.
Looks
Thank
good,
you.
looks great.
That's-
Like the detail.
Pardon me?
Like the detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
The
detailed.
explanations of it, very much, it's great.
Helps with the audit.
Yes, it does. All right, very good. Was there anything else, Kelsey?
That's all I
All right, is there a motion to approve items A through D of the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Moved by Israel,
Second.
second by Kent.
Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. Again, thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the informational items. All right.
The first item I'd like to talk about tonight is something called Reach for Success or Reach Success. We were approached about a month or so ago, maybe a month and a half ago now, by Alex Jones, who is the director of Firelines Forward. And he wanted to connect us with Bill Hornig and Janet Cooper from Reach Success. And we actually met here with our administrative team, Ashley, Tara, David, were you there, here that day? I can't recall, were you? No. Kelsey, you might have been around too. But we met with them and they want to propose bringing in a person into our building who will be a career advisor type job coach person for our students and help them take that next step beyond just earning their high school diploma. And that kind of aligns with some of the goals that we have this year for not just, not just reaching the finish line of the high school diploma, but looking beyond that. And I was able to get some additional information to share with you. And actually, if you look in your folder, there's an email here with some key questions that I had asked and their responses to that. And I'll just briefly go through those. So the position, the official title of the position would basically be a student success director. And their role would be to introduce our students to apprenticeship programs, help them with career readiness, trades, certifications, licensing, getting into those career fields that are centered around their interests and using that as motivation to graduate. As he calls it here, the fight or their reason to graduate. And, this is our kids, a lot of our kids right now that are graduating, when they fill out their survey, they are check marking undecided. They're not sure what they want to do. So this is an area that we want to help our students to have a clear vision for what career paths they do want to take. The position that they are proposing is 20 hours per week. And it would be a 12-month position where there would be some work over the summer by this person. And another neat thing with their program is they help track students beyond graduation to see what they actually follow through and do. So that would give us some very useful data to be able to say, okay, these students went on to college, these students went into the career field. They didn't just say they did, they went into the career field. And it would give us that valuable feedback as to what students are doing beyond high school when they leave here. So the 20-hour position, 12 months a year, and what they are asking is $4,000 per month for that position. Now that comes out to $48,000 for a 20-hour per week position year round. I did ask if there's some wiggle room there to see if that price could be dropped. Because it did seem a little bit high initially, although we're looking at using grant funds for this if we do pursue it. And they said that the summer months would be the wiggle room. So basically, if you want to knock 3 months off the price, they may have less or no responsibilities on the summertime. You could potentially save $12,000 there if they're off over the summer. So I did not put anything on the agenda tonight because we're still in the discussion phase of this and still analyzing if this is a good fit for us and for them. But I did want to bring this to your attention and let you know that we're having these conversations and get any feedback that you may want to share as well.
Tara, how does this work into learning pathways and the success plans that we have?
I think this would be a key piece. When we met with them, it was very encouraging to hear how they would work with the students, connecting them with business opportunities, college, and like the follow through after graduation. Because I think that's a big piece of that success plan. It's not just here, but what they're going to do after college or after high school. It doesn't have to be college. They work with a lot of, the workforce, getting them in there. So I could see it extremely beneficial for our students.
It seemed like a Big Brothers Big Sisters program on steroids.
That's a good way. Yeah.
They really hone in on the rapport, and it's an adult, relationship with them. So they're also building that connectivity that they might not have at home. And then their networking ability helps. And then most kids, like when they leave high school, if they're not college bound, they don't have that fallback. These guys are still there reaching out to them, which I think is cool. And like Ryan said, that's a data point for us, which falls back into the federal. We need that also.
Would this interface with CBI at all?
No, I mean, I could see them working together with our CBI instructors. Collaboration of that piece. I don't see them pushing that as much as what are you going to do after high school, where the CBI piece is,
Part of
like,
high
get
school.
you working right now, right?
I think there'd definitely be some sort of connection there, because, you know, part of this is teaching them those soft skills, teaching them how to be successful outside of the school buildings and interact with people in the workplace. And some of them are getting that life experience through the CBI program, through their current employment. So I think, you know, the dots are going to be connected in ways.
Feedback from board members.
Would you need it for the whole, like from September all the way to the end, or like, because when kids are usually graduating from after Christmas and beyond? I mean, is there gonna be a big benefit out of keeping it in September, August, September?
I think so, because I think you want to identify it early, continue to build on those, you know, those relationships that are built, and not wait till they're done to pursue those avenues, but make those connections as they're going along the way. And their first focus is going to be on seniors, but eventually they want to focus on all grade levels. So I think it would be valuable for them to be here year round and make those connections.
They really wanted to focus on juniors. I mean, you know, the seniors they wanted to work with, they really wanted to hone in on juniors. That way they had a year to work with them before they graduated. So a lot of talk was, you know, getting those skills for a full year while they were working with them before they got out.
And I guess I could understand the summer, because those employment opportunities might be highlighted in the summer, actually. So I could understand year round. It is expensive. I think it's expensive. We do have the funds to be able to benefit our students for that period of time. What are your thoughts?
So how do they measure success? Like, what metric? I mean, how did they come to you and say, hey, listen, this is what we do? And how did they show that? How did they understand?
In terms of the details, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great question.
What's
And
the
I think
net?
that's something that needs to be answered, so.
I mean, you know, I'm just very curious. So they're out of Cleveland, so they would have somebody here 20 hours a week.
Somebody that's more local, that would be here, right? It wouldn't
Look
be.
at number 4,
Would be
Israel,
Bill or Jan.
on the.
Okay. And then would they be working entirely on their own and have their own space? Like, how would that work, having someone in the building?
Yeah, we would provide them with an office, which we've done with a couple other groups in the past. I think WIOA was one group that we had here in the past that was able to connect with students. Slightly different capacity, but we would have space available for them. They'd have the ability to meet with students and interact with them and help them plan for the future.
And then how would we? So I think, you know, I think having somebody like that or anybody like that is great, but then how do we benefit our staff from that? Like, how can we take what they do and almost replicate it? I mean, this is great that this is what they do, but how do we get it to where, you understand what I'm saying? My question is,
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. And we've.
Is there a
talked
way, I
about-
guess, too, is the.
Yeah, we've talked about the possibility of adding a job coach. I mean, that was one of the things that we discussed in our plans for the future, is having a person to assist with that. The benefits of this is getting it started and then possibly being able to, like you say, move somebody into the position as a TCS employee.
Actually, the last question that I asked Bill at the end of that meeting, I asked him, what are the benefits to me bringing somebody in through your program as opposed to me going and hiring somebody in this position myself? And he said, well, number one, the fact that we track kids beyond high school and see what the results actually are, provide you that data. And then secondly, the connections they've already established with businesses and other organizations outside the communities that we're working from, you know, those are already existing, where in some cases, if we bring something new in, maybe have to establish those connections.
Sure, they would have to. So nothing that he said isn't anything that we can't do, but it would take time to develop that.
So anybody else, like, did he have like a recommendation from EHOBY or a recommendation from Sandusky City Schools or anybody like that around here
A
locally?
reference.
Because if he's, here he says, he has someone working in the area building relationships. Well, that would lead me to believe that he is already in the area doing the same thing for someone else. And I would really like to hear what that someone else has to say.
They work with FIDER program, which is the Huron County JFS. That's one of the connections, the initial connections that they would want us to make. Which we've got a lot of students in Huron County, so that would be a plus.
Well, I see the value of the program of wanting to do something like this. The only thing that I'm a little bit uncomfortable about is the salary and the hours. I mean, we're paying people $35 an hour, here somebody wants $50 an hour. And they're not from around this area? That's my concern.
Well, Bill and Janet are not, but the person that they would bring in through their program would be someone more local. And keep in mind, the money that would come from this is not going to come from general funds, it's going to come from grant, ESSER money, which, this is money if we don't use it, we're going to lose it. So the money is available. So the timing of this centers around one of our goals we talked about. And
Would we be able locally to look on our own for somebody to fill this position?
potentially could.
Not to interrupt, but did you say Alex Jones?
Alex Jones.
Okay, Alex is a former Sandusky High School student. He's a graduate of Sandusky High. Big guy, right? That's the Alex I know. So Alex is from the area, Dad's from the area. I actually worked,
He helped us make the connection.
oh, gotcha. So he doesn't necessarily work with Village.
No, he was the director of Fireless Forward, and actually, I got an email today that he stepped down and pursued another employment opportunity. Abby Venus sent out an email asking for any qualified candidates that we may know for that director position for Fireless Forward.
What information would we need? I written down that we would want to know to what extent they interface with CBI, what references they can offer, and what are the metrics that they use for success. Are there any other questions that we would need to have before we would care to?
No, I think those questions are answered. When you references, I think it's good. I think it's really good.
There's a huge hole when we lost our career college and access advisor, which was Charlene. The role that she played, like getting the colleges in here, getting the recruiters in here, connecting those students, answering questions that they have about college and that kind of stuff, was definitely missed last year, even with not having students here in the building, just because the knowledge base of the staff that's here on those items is very lacking. I mean, I did minimal to connect to them, but I didn't have those connections that Charlene had. We need somebody that can build that rapport with students, where I feel like that might have been something that was missing. But that piece that we don't have with the students to get them that connection is missing. And I feel like we're doing a disservice to the students by not being able to at least start putting them in that position after here.
And then to build on what Ashley said in terms of steroids, you've got not just the college aspect of it, but any kind of work transition, school to work transition, in terms of the apprenticeships. So you've got trained or skills that could occur learning of those skills could occur through those apprenticeships. And we've never done anything on that ever. And I guess,
That's more the focus of our kids anyways. I don't think, the percentage of our kids, I don't think are going to college, but I agree.
The ones that do, too, the ones that want to go to college, most of them have no background in applying for FAFSA. When they get their even applications into colleges, they need to take the ACT, like they don't know a lot of that stuff. I had a student last year that wanted to go into nursing, and I was helping her through a lot of that, but to have somebody with that experience, you know, with the contracts, I just think would be extremely beneficial.
Yeah, this person would be that person that would help them with that FAFSA paperwork. Our administration, our teachers, they do have a lot on their plate, and there's limited time for them to really fill this role, I think, as.
well, we're
career
covering
preparation.
6 counties.
Yeah.
You know, that, we gotta remember that. It's not just resources in Erie County, which are a lot. There's
Well,
another
that
county in
That was
South
something
Dakota.
big that I asked too, based on, you know, they're coming out of the Cleveland area and lots of work in Lorraine and Erie and Huron. That was one of my concerns. What about all of our students in Sandusky County and, you know, got students in Ottawa and Seneca? And they did say, you know, they would work to make those connections in those counties too, because that was one of my biggest concerns. If you're focused way over here, what about the other ones?
Well, not only that, but teachers don't know the business outside of education. You know, we don't know, you know, we're expected to be career counselors, we're not, we don't know. We know our jobs, we know the education profession, but we don't know the opportunities that are out there, in other areas of the economy. So I think it's unfair for a teacher to be expected to, you know, get out there and have all that networking ability, you know, they look inside lives inside, you know, 4 walls of the school.
Absolutely.
That's
I'm probably dating myself, but don't they have, remember when we used to have college counselors, the various colleges would send people in to,
But that has to be
Is it-
set up
yeah.
through someone, and we don't have a guidance counselor.
And the
And
guidance
that's who
counselor
it comes through, we don't
I
have
feel more
that.
comfortable hiring the guidance counselor,
We're
you
looking
know?
at a pay increase above that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to comment financially, guidance counselor would be a full-time position, we're talking salary, we're talking benefits, so your cost is increasing exponentially.
Twice a day.
It's like double that.
4,000.
But I think that might be a goal, that we, you know, if our enrollment goes up, to have our own person function like that, I think that would be great. And as Ryan said, that's one of the goals that we have as far as a career focus for our students. So you're absolutely right about that. So what would you like,
One other thing, is this just like a 1-year contract?
It'd be a 1-year contract. And if it's not going well, we could go in a different direction next year. If it's going great, we could continue with the program.
Do they have any price locks, like are they gonna up it next year?
I think it's all negotiable from year to year. Something like this.
so what's your pleasure as far as how you're going to go about this? Have some questions answered and revisit it in September,
Absolutely.
doable?
When do you need to use the funds up? So I know you were talking about the funds. Like,
So,
we have to use those funds up by September.
It's the ESSER fund, so the ESSER carries through.
Well, that's.
We're gonna confirm that we can use ESSER. I'm gonna take a look at, I remember, like a workforce coordinator was one of the questions I had asked that ODE rep about. So I'm gonna revisit my emails. I think he made some recommendations on, it could come out of this, it could come out of this. I'm gonna look at it. But no, there's not, like the ESSER funds specifically, we have until September 2022 for ESSER 1, September 2023 for ESSER 2. So it's not this September that we're trying to get a deadline by.
Okay. Yeah.
That 180,000 is what you're looking at, that
Yeah.
ESSER one. All right, we'll revisit in September and.
We'll get some more questions answered. And we'll-
And if you could just forward the answers to those questions that we can formulate.
Yeah, we can act on it.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds good. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. Item A through D, I do have grouped together. Item A is a recommendation to approve the awarding of high school diplomas to the following students upon successful completion of the graduation requirements as set forth by the state of Ohio. Blake Robinson, Gavin Slocum, Elio Torres, and Victoria Williams. Item B is a recommendation to approve Chad Schlogo as a part-time tutor at a rate of $35 per hour, up to 25 hours per week, and to authorize the treasurer to execute the necessary contracts to effectuate his employment. And again, he would be a math tutor located in our math classroom, helping our math teachers there.
And what's his background, please?
He was once in the teaching realm, and he had a math license, and it's getting that renewed right now. He did let that expire, and he's been like a manager at Walmart for several years. But he started off as a math teacher, served more as a substitute. And he's getting his license renewed. And he actually is the brother of Carrie Beatnap that we hired last month as the social studies tutor.
Have we posted these positions?
Yeah, I
These
posted
tutors? Okay.
the tutor positions.
Okay,
as well.
very
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been searching for quite a while. Item C is a recommendation to approve Ann Street as a part-time teacher under general substitute license at a rate of $35 per hour, up to 25 hours per week, and to authorize the treasurer to execute the necessary contracts to effectuate her employment. And again, Ann would serve in a role where she is the teacher of record for our elective courses.
Did she retain her intervention specialist?
No, I think she just has the general substitute license now. She got a 5-year general substitute license.
Okay.
And then item D is recommendation to approve a contract with NOECA for the 2021-22 school year for services connected to the progress of the suite, including student information, which is known as DASL, and authorize the board president, superintendent, treasurer to sign the contract on behalf of Townsend.
And as you look at the, at least the last page, if you take that service agreement and look at the very last page, Brian, could you, do you have any idea, or Kelsey, how this compares to last year?
Well, there was a price freeze. There was a 3-year price freeze that Jeff had signed back in September of 2020, I believe. And, I don't know the exact amount. I could look after this.
Okay.
I think I have that contract somewhere. Save Google Drive. So it should be similar.
Yeah.
Right around 16,000. But that's been a good decision as a school for us to move over working with NOECA. It's been very good. There's been some bumps in the road. A lot of learning curve's been there, but we've worked through it, and it's definitely going to benefit us in the long run.
Are there any questions on those recommendations? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve them as presented.
I move to approve A and B.
Moved by Kent, second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Israel. Any discussion? We'll have the roll, please.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Celine. Yes. Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Okay, item E is a recommendation for the following policies in their substantial form as presented. Policy 114 is the ethics and conflicts policy, which board members, superintendent, treasurer will also need to sign. Policies 206, general notice of non-discrimination. Policy 222 is Title IX coordinator. Policy 222.1, Title IX grievance procedure. Policy 264, sexual and other forms of harassment. And policy 264.1, anti-harassment, intimidation, and bullying. These are policies that we are required to recognize and approve on an annual basis.
And are you continuing as the Title IX coordinator?
Yes, the Title IX coordinator, and then in terms of the appeals, Kelsey as treasurer is the first person of appeals, and then the second person is study coordinator Ashley. in the policy, you'll see there's blanks we have to fill in those blanks with those. definitions.
We don't want to get data.
Looking at last year, those positions were blank, so
Yeah.
we addressed that.
You heard it here, Steve.
Yes, I did. I can confirm.
All right, is there a motion to approve action item E?
So,
Moved by Jackie, is there a second?
Second.
By Kent, second by Kent, go ahead the roll, please.
Mrs. Salee,
yes,
Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item F. Item F is a recommendation to approve policy 411.1, use of face masks and coverings, which strongly recommends that all students, faculty, staff, and volunteers wear face mask covering while in school during the 21-22 school year. So, talking to our legal team, there's two versions of this policy that we could have looked at. One is where and there's check boxes that you'll see pull up this policy here for 11.1. There's two spots where there's check boxes where we have to either select shall wear face mask coverings or are strongly recommended to wear face mask coverings. And I know this is a sensitive subject, and we, I wanted to make sure we took the input from everyone. I did get an opportunity to feedback from all board members, and I appreciate that. I did also get the opportunity to get feedback from our staff on August 3rd when we had a voluntary staff meeting. And, trying to keep an eye on what's going on locally, as well as the recommendations from the health department. And the recommendation here goes along with what Margaretta and a lot of the other area schools are doing, which strongly recommends the wearing of face masks in school. Now, we will require our students to wear them on the bus, just as Margaretta is for their students. That's coming from the CDC right now. So schools are requiring or having to require students to wear them on the bus, making the decision in terms of what to do in school.
Okay, so as we look at this, I'll entertain your input.
I agree with the strongly recommended.
As opposed to required.
I just think
Because,
well, so now the kids have been away from the masks for the whole summer and everything, and to try to put them back into it, I think you're gonna see a lot more pushback than when you did the first time
pushback from the students.
from the students, and honestly, staff, from what I hear, because a lot of them are vaccinated now. And
What's our percentage of vaccination?
I don't have an exact percentage, but I think we had over 2/3 of our staff get vaccinated spring or February.
some staff is like, well, I got vaccinated because they didn't want to wear a mask anymore. They're gonna require them to wear masks. I don't know. I think strongly recommend it because according to when I talked to another superintendent, Ed, and he said that there's no punishment if the kid comes in and says they don't wear a mask. There's no punishment inside. Is that correct? Nothing.
I can speak on that, being a co-COVID coordinator, that is correct. And that is also on buses as well. I was told to us today in service that if a student gets on the bus, we'll give them a mask, but I can also confirm that other school districts are doing the same. If they do not put the mask on, there will be consequences for that.
It's hard to enforce that when there's no mandate at the state level to force students to abide by that requirement. And then, like Steve said, our hands are tied, we can't.
If you look at the flow chart, the most recent flow chart that's put out, even a quarantine is recommended. They do not use the word mandate.
Could you speak louder?
We fought that at Mylan, where my son goes, we fought the recommendation versus mandate because it's sports, you're out 14 days, but school, you're 10, so justify that to me. You know what I mean? Like, my kid needs to be in to learn, I'm not worried about the sports right now, but why, what's the differentiation? And explain that to me, and they couldn't, they go, well, we go case by case, well, then that's not a mandate, that's a recommendation.
All wording currently is recommendation on everything. And just so you know, if you are vaccinated, let me go through the rundown real quick. So if you're unvaccinated and unmasked, the recommendation of a close contact to a positive would be 10 days. If you are unvaccinated and masked, you are okay. And if you are unvaccinated and unmasked and you test negative between days 5 and 7, you can get out of quarantine in day 7. That's their recommendation. If you are vaccinated and you come in close contact with a positive individual, so keep in mind that's 15 minutes or more of 6 feet or less, then you are looking at a mask for 14 days. And if not, you have to test negative in days 3 through 5, which would then allow you to come out of the mask after that. I'm just gonna be completely transparent with everybody. I don't know how the health department and us are going to do this. There are so many different levels here that were not in play last year. And I don't know if a student's vaccinated.
I was just gonna say, are you allowed to?
That's all gonna come from the health department, and I am not joking. By the end, 75% of a positive test that we received came from the parents because the health department was so backed up. Not to any fault of them, it's just when you have a volume of a size of your county, it is very difficult for them to get back to you, so forth.
It's, as far as I know, because I've been talking to the health department also about this, is that questioning whether a person is vaccinated or not is from someone else is you run the risk of a HIPAA violation. However, you can ask for the production of a card, to demonstrate that you have been vaccinated. So that is something that is being utilized by certain districts. I guess what I'm wondering is, what is a day here going to look like? What is this going to look like under strongly recommended? So are teachers going to be masked since they don't know who the students are that are vaccinated and not vaccinated? I get concerned about that.
Well, technically, even if you are vaccinated, you would not demonstrate symptoms, because best case scenario, but you still transmit
Exactly.
the virus. So what we have done at Margaretta, and it's completely personal choice for teachers, but if you are unvaccinated and you are working with the student for what would be more than 15 minutes and less than 6 feet, you might want to have a mask in your pocket. You might want to put that mask on. Or if you do not, you run the risk of being recommended to quarantine. And it is, the wording here is of, I'm not gonna lie, concern for a COVID coordinated situation.
So we're also dealing with, we're not dealing with just Erie County. So if someone tests positive in here in Ottawa or Seneca or Lorraine County, for the relay from that health department to get to our health department, to get to us, is lengthy. Unless you're proactive and just come back with our situation, we wrestled someone in Medina. So how long do you think it would have took Medina County to get to Erie County if I wouldn't have proactively known, because I didn't want him to have to start quarantining 21 days later versus, when he already reached that. But there's that tie, you know,
Well,
and
even,
you don't.
listen, I live in Union County. I was on quarantine from my mother. And last July when I had it, I found out on day 11 of my 14-day quarantine that I was positive. 3 days before my quarantine ended. And my quarantine ended on the same day that it would have. So I knew for 3 days I was positive, but I knew because of my symptoms that I was positive.
But they're so-
I was on quarantine and never got a phone call telling me to be on quarantine.
Okay, so what
It's just
do
goofy.
Israel?
It's really goofy.
No, I agree, strongly recommend it. I believe it should be everybody's choice whether they want to wear the mask or not. If you feel that you're in jeopardy, then by all means wear it. If you were okay with getting COVID and dealing with it at that time, then that's on you. You know, I'm not gonna get into the debate of vaccinations one way or the other. I believe it's all a choice, and that's how I feel. So,
I go along with the wording, I strongly recommend, like I said, because I can see conflict, if you make it mandatory. So I go with, strongly recommend it. But the one thing I found is, I don't mind wearing the mask. Some masks are more comfortable than others. I found that to be true.
Yeah.
I guess
To be sure.
to answer your question for the 14, what will this look like? First of all, I will share that service is our policy with our staff so that they are aware of what this policy is. And it is for staff and students, we strongly recommend it. Now, with that being said, there is an element of choice there for teachers and for our students. So I can't force, if we approve this, I can't force them to wear it, but we strongly recommend it. I keep a mask in my office. If I'm around a big group of students, I would probably put it on just to try to set the example because we still have strongly recommend.
I have one question. So as the students enter the building, is there a survey or we're not doing temperature scans? And I know for my work, we're supposed to be doing a survey online every day. And it's basically, you know, have you been in contact? Are you showing any symptoms? There's like 3 questions. If you can answer those questions, then you know, obviously, I know it by now. You know what I mean? So as the students enter the building, do we have anything that says
Any screening?
yeah, and I'm not saying that, you know, it's just another layer, right? Just to make everybody think about how do I really feel today? Do I really need to walk in this building?
Yeah, Kroger, they have a big sign when you walk in and it has like,
We
how you
very often,
feel well, blah, blah, blah.
we very often have students walk in this building going, oh, I feel so horrible today. I mean, prior to COVID, that level of, I don't feel good, I probably shouldn't go to school isn't always there.
Yeah, so for me, every day is, in the last 10 days, have you received a confirmed diagnosis for COVID? In the last 10 days, have you been in close contact with or cared for someone currently diagnosed? And then question 3 is, in the last 10 days, have you experienced any cold or flu-like symptoms? So an answer, no to all 3 questions, and you're free to go into work, right? We don't do temperature scans anymore, so it's just a layer, you know what I mean? And
We
Can we
can,
ask our bus drivers to do that though? Because by the time the kids get here from Fostoria,
Yeah.
if they walk in and tell us no, then we have to call a parent that's an hour away and tell them to come pick up their kids because they just.
and I'm not saying we need to do this,
No,
but I'm
but
just saying,
See it not being a bad idea, but then does that fall on the bus driver?
Right, to
Or
take them
right,
back.
It needs to
If
be
they-
something electronic.
Yeah, I want to put that on bus driver.
Do you have an aid this year with your buses or just the bus driver?
well, so we're using final forms, right?
yeah.
So can we at least put that out there, hey,
We
listen,
will, yep.
just remember, and that's it, right? And then at least we can say that we've given you the opportunity to, and if you decide to come in, then, you know what I mean? Then I guess there's not much we can do anyways, but, you know, from the outside looking in, it probably looks a lot better than no questions at all. And I don't want to be invasive. I don't want to be in anybody's business.
I think those frequent reminders to all, students and staff, or students and parents that if the student's not feeling well, please keep them home. Send them with those little symptoms to school. I don't know if our kiosk has that capability to ask those questions. We can talk, David can probably talk to them and see if there's like a survey option for COVID that they've maybe implemented. I'm not sure.
I mean, we got kids on the bus though, and you're right, it's just,
Yeah,
If it's not gonna happen at home,
right, we're just putting a blanket statement out there.
I
And
agree.
believe it's a responsibility of that household or of that student.
Right, is there a motion?
With that, we also put the communication to the Erie County Health Department on the flow chart, so that it was communicated with parents and with final forms option now. Maybe you want to do that since you reside in Erie County as well, just so you can say you have shared that with parents as well.
That doable, David?
Not a time clock,
I'm sorry,
not a time clock.
I don't understand what you're.
You mean on the time clock, when the kids don't get it?
No, I'm saying, as far as the website goes, to put
Oh, absolutely.
information from the health
So I
department.
know. Please don't.
And of course, it's all subject to, where we are. By the time school starts.
Continue to evaluate, if we need to be flexible, if the state mandate comes out, obviously we'll adjust our policy and align it.
I actually think more students read or parents at least read our Facebook than.
Okay, is there a motion to approve item F? Moved by Kent, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Israel, we'll have the roll, please.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Salee,
Yes,
Mrs. Smith.
No.
Okay, moving on to item G, we have a recommendation to approve the First Amendment to the renewal contract for Townsend Community School and authorize the board president to take all steps necessary to execute the amendment. Again, this is in connection with the addition of a second site.
And you have that for you. So you can see the additional under I, so under, it was in the back of.
is this the one?
Yeah, it's the second to last document.
So we had in our contract with Margaretta as our sponsor, one site, I, and the second site is listed and described here. And just for my information, was it in May that we approved this second site?
It was, the lease was, I believe, May. I would have to go back.
That's what I
May or
had.
June, but I think it's May.
Okay. So it's something that we have already approved, but we need to approve this amendment to the contract with Margaret. Is there a motion?
I move.
Moved by
Second.
Kent, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Israel. And with Jackie. Kelsey.
Oh, Mr. Edwards. Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. Motion carries. So we'll go on. We're going to, so we'll get that signed to you, Steve. Do you want us to,
Yes, I believe Brian, in looking back at the communication that Brian has Stephanie that to him, so I will.
They also want to draft up minutes for tonight, so Kelsey, always gonna put those minutes
Okay.
together, so we can set a draft. like this.
Okay, and do you want me to sign this, Kelsey, or do you have a clean copy that you need me to sign?
You're talking about the
I
minutes
have-
from tonight, right?
Well, the copy that I have is the same that we have, but I have that two pages here.
Okay.
So I have this, and I.
Just so I get
Like
something to sign, so you get a signed copy. All right, let's move on to action item H.
Okay, item H is a recommendation to have RJ Beck install a new public address system at the quote of $22,500 and authorize the treasurer to execute the necessary contracts. This is a quote that I had shared a while back, a few months ago, when we got quotes for different projects. And RJ Beck is the company that's putting the buzzer intercom system in on Thursday. And this is a project I've wanted to do the last couple of years, because I felt that as a building, we need to do this for safety purposes, because we do not really have a functioning PA system. And if there were an emergency to happen, we would be in a bad situation. So I would like to utilize the grant funds that we have, ESSER funds that are available to tackle this project.
I'm gonna piggyback, I know I'm saying way too much. When I was principal here, from the very minute you moved in, that was a problem. I had to plug in my Mac and have a pre-recorded message just to get it out there, and they even heard it in nature. This is a big problem.
We're in action item H. This one.
Oh, okay.
Any discussion or questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve action item H?
So
Second,
I will second.
any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have the roll.
Mr. Edwards,
yes.
Mr. Palumbo,
Yes.
Mrs. Solis,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Going back to item G, Jackie, you'd like to vote, we had 3 yes votes for item G, which was the First Amendment to our renewal contract, which would help with having Corrective open a site for meeting a site and discussing with our students in addition to. Opportunity to vote.
Yes.
Yes. And those are all the recommendations I have this evening.
All right, I have no further business at this time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
You're quick on that one, aren't you? Oh, I knew that. It's changed the order though.
I was all fixed.
Very good. Meeting is adjourned at 8:23.